Hi, I'm Debbie and welcome to Book and Bujo, where I talk about all things books, bullet journals, and stationery. I'm so glad you stopped by today for my May stats and wrap-up. I'm going to do things a tad differently today as there are so many books that I read in May. We would be here for hours if I gave a full review for each book. So I'm going to let you know if I read the book and what my star rating was for each of them. As always, I chapter my videos, so if you like to skip the stats and go right to the books, feel free. For everyone else, let's start with the stats. First up is my star ratings. So I am happy to say I had 0 1 stars. I had 0 2 stars. Awesome. I had 4 3 stars. I had 22 4 stars and 1 5 star. So not too bad. I read 27 books, 8,850 pages, and I listened to 219 hours of audiobooks. For demographics, I read 2 children's books, 0 middle grade, 7 young adult books, 5 new adult books, 5 new adult books, which is kind of that college age area, and then 13 adult books. Next up is format. For format, I did read 2 short stories. I read 2 novellas, 1 poem, which that one I've seen it listed as poetry, and I've also seen it listed as a graphic novel. I counted it as poetry just because. I read 2 graphic novels and then 20 standard novels. For series, I started 9 new series. I know. What you gonna do? I did continue 9 series, which is great, and I completed 3 series. Now, one of the series is done. I completed the entire universe of that book. A couple of them I completed like the trilogy, but there's still more in the universe of that book. So, but I'm still counting it as a win towards completed series. And those were the Rune series, the First Law trilogy, and then the Elantris series, because there's kind of 3 books in under the Elantris heading or title for book series in the overarching Cosmere, and I did get to all 3 of those. Next up is genres. So I read 12 fantasy, no surprise there. I read 2 nonfiction, 1 poetry, 3 classics, 1 romance, 3 paranormal, 2 horror, 1 mystery, and 2 sci-fi. It was nice to kind of get back into the sci-fi genre. Most of the time I read more of like a fantasy sci-fi where it's geared more towards geared more towards fantasy with sci-fi elements, where these books were definitely just sci-fi was the main genre. So that was nice to get back to those. Next up is sources. So I did read 14 books from my library. That includes physical books from my library as well as ebooks and audiobooks from my library through Hoopla or through the actual library itself. I did not haul any books, but I did borrow 6, and 7 of them were off my own TBR, which also is great. 1 was physical, the rest were ebooks. Next up is book type. So I listened to 10 audiobooks, I read 10 ebooks, 1 physical book, and then 6 mixed media. Now for the mixed media, I have ebook and audiobook together, or I have physical book and audiobook together, and there's 3 of each of those. All right, lastly is the publication dates. So this went through 1805 to 2022. So nothing from this year, but it did run quite a large span of time periods. I had 1 each from 1805 and 1883, also 1 each, or 1 from 1960, and then 2 from 1990, which would be the Discworld books by Terry Pratchett. And then we skip all the years in between, and we jump from 1990 to 2005, had 1 book, 2 books from 2006, and then 1 from 2008, 2 from 2012, 1 each from 2014 and 2016, 4 books from 2017, and then 2 books each from 2018, 2019, 2020, and 2021, and 2022. So my favorite book for the month was definitely Dragon Mage. So good. I'm glad I finally got to that, and that is by M.L. Spencer, and it is the first book in the Riven World series. My highest rated book also was Dragon Mage, And then best character. This one was a hard one because there's a lot of really good books that I read, and there's a lot of the characters that I really like. Like I really like Glocta and Logan Ninefingers from the First Law trilogy. I also really liked all of the characters from Dragon Mage. But I also read some interesting books. So I read Bow Before the Elf Queen, which I really liked as well. Some of the characters were good in there. But I think I'm gonna have to go with it. I read a memoir, so that was one of the nonfiction books I read, and that was My Mother Was Nuts by Penny Marshall. And I'm gonna pick Penny Marshall. She was an interesting lady, and I really enjoyed reading about not only her but also her family, and it was just really interesting, and especially growing up somewhat through that time period. She's a little beyond my age group, but I grew up watching her on Laverne and Shirley and Happy Days and some of that when I was a kid, and I think it just brought back some fun memories of being a kid, and knowing of the actors that she knew and the people that she surrounded herself with, and just some of the different things about her. I really enjoyed it, and if you grew up watching Laverne and Shirley as well, I would highly recommend reading her book. Standout author for the month would also be M.L. Spencer. Dragon Mage kind of swept the board this month. It was my only 5-star read, and I just thoroughly enjoyed that book. I think the writing style was done really well. The characterization was good. I think the pacing was good. I mean, it was over 850-page book, but it didn't feel super long. Like I wasn't like, oh my gosh, how many chapters do I have left? How many pages do I still have left? I just was reading and thoroughly enjoyed it. Yeah, I would highly recommend that one as well. So now, let's get to the books. All right. Start with TBR Opoly. And happy to say I have everything colored in, which is always a beautiful thing. So we'll kind of, just to keep this somewhat short and not be hours long, again, I will just kind of go through and give my star rating and maybe a quick thought if I really enjoyed the book or something stood out to me. So we'll start with prompt number 1, as always. So it was to read a Jane Austen book, and for that I read The Watsons by Jane Austen. This one is something that Jane Austen did not finish before she passed away, and so somebody else came in and kind of finished writing the book in her style. It wasn't super memorable. Like, I really enjoyed it where I was reading it, but I can't necessarily go back now a month later and tell you much about it, except for it kind of went along with all the rest of her books. It was still in the style like Emma and Pride and Prejudice and, some of the other books that she wrote. So yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I gave it 4 stars. Next prompt was to randomize my TBR, and I got For Fox's Sake, which is the first book in the Chaos of Foxes series by Emma Dean, and that I also gave 4 stars. This one, I liked it more than I thought I would going in. It is a reverse harem book with shapeshifters that shift from man to fox and back. Next prompt was read a business book, and I read YouTube Secrets by Sean Cannell and Benji Travis, and I really enjoyed this one. Their writing style is really good. I mean, they have millions of subscribers on YouTube, and they both seem like they're really great people, and it was enjoyable. They give real world tips and ways to actually implement what they're trying to teach you into your routine and your life. And so for Fox's Sake and YouTube Secrets, I gave both of those 4 stars as well. You'll notice a trend. Most of the books I gave 4 stars to this month, which is great because it was a wonderful reading month. Next up was to read a fantasy, and for that I read The Bonehunters, and that is the 6th book in the Malazan Book of the Fallen series by Stephen Erickson, and again, 4 stars. Next prompt was TBR jar, and I pulled The Merry Adventures of Robin Hood by Howard Pyle, and I was surprised I had not read this book yet with the plethora of Robin Hood movies that are out there. I'm surprised I had never actually read the actual book, and that one I gave 4 stars to as well. It was cute, it was quirky, it was funny, and it was a good time. And then I pulled a card to read the next book in the Runes series, and that was Gods, which is the 10th book in the Runes universe, and it's the 3rd and final book in the Eric series, which is a little spin-off. So you follow Ring Cooper, you follow Cora Jemison, and Eric Balderson, and between those 3, the Cora and Eric both have 3 books, and Rain has 4 and a novella. And I gave that one 4 stars. So that was another completed series. Yay me! So next up was an Amazon borrow, and that I read My Mother Was Nuts by Penny Marshall. Again, 4 stars. I really enjoyed that book. Yeah, it was fun. Then was to read a book with a dragon on the cover, and again, Dragon Mage by M.L. Spencer, and I gave that one 5 stars. And then I landed on TBR game, so I have to go to another YouTuber's TBR game and use one of their prompts and either choose the book they chose or just do that prompt for myself. And I went to Kaylani Simply Me, and she does a TBR bingo every month, and if you haven't checked it out, you definitely should. I will leave her channel linked in the description box below. Her prompt was a TBR jar, so I pulled another prompt from my TBR jar, and for that I got Plague of the Shattered, which is the 2nd book in the Gateway Tracker series by E.E. Holmes. And that I gave 4 stars. And then, because I finished all of my audiobooks early, I still had physical books and ebooks to read, but while I'm in the car and things like that, I can't be physically reading anything, so I like to listen to audiobooks. And so I had time to listen to an extra audiobook or 2 this in May, and so I read Bow to the Elf Queen, which is the 1st book in the Elf Queen series by J.M. Kirill, and I gave that 4 stars. How did your May reading go? Did you get to all the books that you wanted to? Let me know down in the comments below. Next up is book clubs. So I will leave a link to all of the book clubs and the read-alongs in the description box below. And while you're down there, go ahead and tap that like button and subscribe if you wanna. So I only participated in 1 book club book this month. The other 2, one of them I had already read, and the other one I couldn't get a hold of, so I just didn't read those 2. And the one I did participate in was the Howling Pack Book Club with the Wild Sasha, and we read The Ninth Rain, which is the 1st book in the Winnowing Flame series by Jen Williams. And that one I did give 4 stars. Next up is read-alongs. So let's start with the Catch-Up Book Club with Becca and the Books, and we read Last Argument of Kings, which is, I believe, the May and June book, and that is by Joe Abercrombie. It is the 3rd and final book in the First Law trilogy, even though there are more books in the First Law world, and that I gave 4 stars to. Next up is the Shadowhunter Readalong with Love, Lisa, and we are up to Ghosts of the Shadow Market by Cassandra Clare, and that one is another compilation of short stories, and I gave 4 stars to that one. Then is the Malazan Readalong with Kay's Hidden Shelf, and we read the Bonehunters, which is the 6th book in the Malazan Book of the Fallen series, and that is by Stephen Erickson, and again, I gave that 4 stars. And then, as I mentioned earlier, I am doing the Cosmere Readalong with Elliot Brooks. For May, we were to read Elantris, The Emperor's Soul, and The Hope of Elantris by Brandon Sanderson, and I gave each of those books 4 stars. And then for the Wheel of Time read-along, I actually read the book in April. It was for April and May, and that's with Got a Thing for Things. And I read The Dragon Reborn, which is the 3rd book in the Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan, and I also gave that one 4 stars. And last read-along is Around the Disc in 800 with Literary Diversions, and we were up to the 8th and 9th book in the Discworld series by Terry Pratchett, and those are Eric, which I gave 4 stars, and Moving Pictures, which I gave 3.5 stars. So overall, it was a great reading month for me. For my readathons wrap-up and the 7 other books that I read, check out my May 2023 readathons wrap-up that I will link in the cards above and also down below in the description box. And on your way up to the cards, go ahead and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any videos from me. And if you made it to the end, be sure to leave a dice emoji in the comments to let me know you were here in honor of TBRopoly. Thank you again for joining me and helping me to reach 200 subscribers. You are all so amazing. I thank you so much. And until next time, keep reading.